It's important in this community that we're aware of child sexual exploitation because it's everybody's responsibility. It doesn't matter whether you're a hotel owner, whether you're a parent, whether you work for the council, whether you're a police officer. We all need to look after our children because they're the people of our future.
So what is CSE? CSE is child sexual exploitation. It occurs when there's a victim under the age of 18 years old and happens when there's a perpetrator or an offender who seeks to take advantage of that young person, coercing them, deceiving them, encouraging them to engage in sexual activity, which a young person may think they're consenting to, but actually there's a power imbalance that's at play. In terms of signs that a young person or child is being sexually exploited, there's a number of things that you can look out for. One of the main indicators is in relation to a change of behaviour. So it could be a change in who they're hanging around with, how they're spending their time. They might have sporting interests and hobbies that they're no longer engaging with. Another indicator might be around missing, so in terms of the whereabouts being unknown, maybe hanging around with new friends, new locations, feeling maybe more distant from their family. You also might notice with a young person that they might look different, so physically they might be having more injuries, they might look withdrawn. There may be signs that they're using drug and alcohol, so returning home under the influence. Maybe returning home with new gifts or new items that are unaccounted for. It could be a new mobile phone, new jacket, new trainers. Something that the young person can't explain how they could afford that. So often we experience young people who return home with additional phones. It could be a new iPhone, as we know they're not cheap and they're not easy to get hold of. So it could be asking a few questions, who's paying that bill, who paid for the handset. We often get young people who return home with maybe kind of tracksuit bottoms, designer clothes that are expensive but also unaccounted for. Young people might become increasingly secretive when they're being exploited, so they might return home maybe with a bag, it looks like it's got some items in it. Again, maybe go straight to their bedroom to hide their items. So in terms of online exploitation, the grooming process is a key process used by perpetrators to trap victims. So what they might do is reach out to young people on different social media platforms using language that the young person might use, maybe posting fake pictures, building up a fake profile of themselves, all designed to entice that young person. Once they initiate the conversation with that young person, it might be around sending them stuff, getting more details about them and really gathering the vulnerabilities of that young person. So for example, if a young person has experienced abuse, we've had perpetrators online reaching out to victims, asking them to tell them about the abuse, being kind of the friendly ear for them to talk to and disclose information to. And that is really where the entrapment process starts in terms of exploitation. They might encourage the young person to share indecent images, maybe arrange to meet them, live stream videos. It kind of all depends on the power imbalance and what that perpetrator is hoping to succeed. Another thing to look out for might be if a young person is presenting as intoxicated or under the influence of something. Alcohol and drugs can often be used to manipulate young people, to kind of make them less aware of their surroundings and what's going on and less able to react. So if, for example, you're in a pub or a hotel and you notice that a young person doesn't seem to be aware of their surroundings or what's going on, it's really important to start asking questions and looking a bit deeper into what's happening. That could be around establishing the relationship of who the young person's with, checking IDs, speaking to the young person, seeing if they know the name of the people that they're with, if they know where they've been that night and what's going on. A lot of the victims of exploitation that we work with often don't recognise they've been exploited. They might see themselves as being able to consent to what is happening without realising the power imbalance or that they've been manipulated or deceived into the situation. Young people often feel that they have control of the situation, but it's only afterwards when we start unpicking what has happened and looking at the concerns that we know that they haven't had control and that there has been a power imbalance. In England, the law is that a young person under the age of 16 cannot consent to sexual activity. However, 16 and 17-year-olds can still be exploited. The issues that come into play here are where there's a power imbalance and other things may have happened. For example, a 16 or a 17-year-old may have a learning difficulty that affects their ability to give informed consent and to understand what they're consenting to. Substances can be used to hinder a young person's view or perception of what's happening. One approach that perpetrators may use is to encourage a young person to use alcohol and substances. It might start off with drinking, using cannabis, but then building up to using harder, stronger drugs that it results in the young person becoming dependent on these drugs, for example, cocaine or heroin. What we have experienced recently in Rotherham is young people being encouraged to use these drugs, but then building up a drug debt and feeling trapped as though they owe the perpetrator money for the drug debts. One way to pay off this money, and one option that is given to the young person, is around sexual activity. This could be in hotels, it could be in cars, it could be on the street. It all depends on where that perpetrator operates and what methods they use. We've experienced young people in Rotherham where they will be saying to their parents that they've been using drugs, but friends have given it to them, it's been a lay-on. That's a phrase that's often used by young people when they've been given free drugs. But what we're coming to learn is that nothing is given for free and that these young people will be expected to repay that in some way. This could be involving criminality or sexual activity. We've had young people who have mentioned being threatened with by guns, seeing other people threatened with by guns, other weapons, and the fear is real. These young people are absolutely terrified of the consequences if they don't do what they're being told to do. Once the drug debt's been built up, these young people are then encouraged to engage in maybe sexual activity or criminality in order to pay these debts off. What we know is that young people have been seriously injured or stabbed for drug debts as low as £10, so it is significant. What we know about victims of exploitation is that they can be any gender, male or female, any background, any ethnicity and any race. Exploitation really does affect young people far and wide. Some young people are more vulnerable to exploitation than others. That can be a result of early life experiences, trauma, domestic abuse in the family household, inappropriate or unhealthy relationships, growing up in a family where there's blurred sexual boundaries. You might have parents who misuse substances and there's less supervision of their children. Children with a learning difficulty. These things may make it easier for a perpetrator to target young people and exploit them. Everyone has a duty to safeguard children and young people. If you see something that worries or concerns you, please report it and let someone know. What you might be doing is helping us to put together a bigger picture of what life is like for this young person, and that little bit of information could be all we need to tie things up.